Yes, I have.
Okay. And what did you do with that when you received it?
So this is the firearm that I operated during the examination of this case. I checked the safeties of the firearm. I checked the trigger pull of the firearm. I checked the overall safety of it, the condition, whether or not it would be safe to fire. And then ultimately I produced test fires for the comparison in this case.
Okay. What is that?
This is a Smith & Wesson model M&P 15. So it's a rifle manufactured by Smith & Wesson.
Okay. And people commonly call it an AR-15. Why is that?
So it's an AR style firearm. The AR style firearm is just an Armalite rifle that was designed for military purposes. And so this is a personal use or civilian use version of that, in that it's semi-automatic, so it's not like the original M16s that were manufactured for the military. But the design of it is still the same. The receiver, the buttstock, the foregrips, they're all the same design as the original AR-15s.
Okay. And what caliber of rifle is that?
This one is a 5.56 NATO caliber rifle. 5.56 NATO is a synonym for 223, so it will chamber both 5.56 and 223. The 5.56 NATO cartridges are faster cartridges. They have more powder inside of the cartridge itself, so it's not recommended that you chamber a 5.56 into a 223 firearm, but because this one is a 5.56 firearm, you can do both interchangeably.
Okay, so that weapon, States Exhibit 270, fires both 5.56 and .223?
Correct.
Okay. And how does it operate?
May I approach Drew to show that?
Do you need to step down to show?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm not going to unstrap the firearm. I'm going to leave it strapped in. There is no magazine in the firearm, so there's no ammunition. I don't have any ammunition on me. The way that you would operate this firearm is you would load a magazine. It's a detachable magazine. It's inserted into the magazine well. So once the magazine is entered, the bolt of the firearm is retracted and dropped. If it's not already in the rearmost position, in which case it can just be dropped. At that point, the firearm will be ready to fire with one cartridge inside of the chamber, and the remaining cartridges are inside of the magazine. You can then pull the trigger. It'll discharge around that's inside of the firearm, loading another one, and the casing will end up somewhere to the right and rear of where I would be standing. So that's essentially how you would function this. And it will fire one cartridge case every time you pull the trigger until the magazine is empty, or unless you have a jam. So if the firearm jams, then you have to clear the jam and then begin the process all over.
Okay. And what is the purpose of the bipod? You want to show us what the bipod is?
So the bipod he's referring to is this piece right here. What that does is it allows a shooter to stabilize his shots. So if you rest the bipod onto a solid surface, you can then use your arm and pull the firearm into your shoulder without necessarily having a second hand on the forearm of the firearm. And so your shots are much more stable from a solid surface on this bipod than they would be just using your hands.
Okay. And the forward vertical grip, what's the purpose of that?
The vertical grip is this part right here. And so that is another stabilizing feature. It's more comfortable for somebody who's shooting to have a vertical grip as opposed to cradling the firearm in their hands. You also have a better grip on this than you would on just the frame of the firearm itself. And so the grip is basically to stabilize your shots as you fire.
Okay, you can have a seat. So when you examined that weapon, Mr. Bello, what was added onto the weapon after purchase?
So when Smith & Wesson manufactures a few different versions, or they sell a few different versions of the M&P 15, the standard version does not come with this rail plate or the bipod, the vertical grip, or the backpack strap. So those would all be add-on items that were not manufactured with this firearm.
Okay. Did you test the trigger pull of that weapon?
I did.
What is a trigger pull?
The trigger pull of this firearm is approximately 5 pounds. What that means essentially is that it takes 5 pounds of pressure from your index finger or shooting finger in order to discharge the firearm itself.
Okay. want to show you State's exhibits. Mark 275, that has been previously identified by Detective Crespo as being the magazine that was in State's Exhibit 270 that rifle that you just explained the operation to us.
Yes, that's correct.
Have you looked at that magazine?
I have.
Okay, what is that?
So this is a 30-round magazine designed for an AR-15 type rifle. So any AR-15 type rifle will accept this, or rather, AR-15 type rifle or pistol will accept this magazine. It's designed to hold 30 rounds. The reason I say it's designed to hold 30 rounds is that if I'm loading the firearm, I might be able to squeeze another round in there, versus if my wife was loading the firearm, maybe she can't squeeze the extra round. So it's designed, the manufacturer says put 30 rounds in it. Sometimes it can hold a little bit more, sometimes it holds a little less.
And what type of ammunition can be placed into that magazine?
This can hold either 5.56 or .223 ammunition, either way.
Okay. Showing you now State's Exhibit 271. It's been identified as the cartridge removed from the chamber of 270. What is that?
So this is a live cartridge. It is a 5.56 cartridge manufactured by Lake City, and it's a full metal jacket cartridge.
And you examined that?
I did.
Okay. And State's Exhibit 272 that's previously identified as being in the magazine, it's been identified as State's Exhibit 275.
So these are other live ammunition that were submitted with the firearm. The key difference, I guess, in some of these ammunitions is that they have the NATO designation for tracer rounds, the orange tips. So NATO actually has different designations for their ammunition, and they will band the tips of their ammunition with different colors, and those colors signify different things. So in this case, this orange tip on this ammunition indicates that it's a tracer round, or they are tracer rounds.
What is a tracer round?
So a tracer round is a type of round which the bullet is essentially the same as any standard bullet. However, in the base of the projectile, there is a small amount of incendiary. And so what that's meant to do is that when you're firing, that incendiary will be ignited by the powder that's inside of the cartridge during firing, and allowing the shooter to see where that projectile is traveling, especially if it's in the dark.
Okay. And how many tracer rounds were in that exhibit?
11.
Okay. Are they all 5.56s?
They are.
Okay.
Yes.
So do you know how many 5.56 and how many 223s were in that exhibit?
One moment. I can look at my report. I don't recall exactly how many were in this particular exhibit.
Well, there were 23 in there, right?
Correct. And it looks like 3 of them are 223s, and the remaining are 5.56.
Okay. Now I want to show you station that marked 300 that has been identified by Detective Crespo as a rail cover found on the 3rd floor of the Stoneman building. Have you examined that?
I have.
And did you examine it with reference to Stacy's Exhibit 270, which is the 5.56 rifle you explained to us?
I did.
And what did you discover?
That this seems to be the matching rail cover for the rail cover that's currently on the firearm. So it seems like it must have come dislodged during the event.
Okay. And show you State Exhibit 196. It is a live round found by Detective Christian in a backpack on the first floor of the 1200 building outside of classroom 1216. Have you examined that?
Yes.
What is that?
This is a live 5.56 cartridge, full metal jacket, manufactured by Lake City. So again, another cartridge that could have been fired to that firearm.
Okay. And I'm going to show you State Exhibit 266, which has been identified as 2 fired casings found in the west stairwell on the first floor of the 1200 building. Have you examined that?
Yes, I did.
And what type of examination did you do?
So because these were casings, these require microscopic examination in comparison to the test fires produced by the firearm. And so I took these 2 casings and using the casings and test fires from the firearm, I put them under the microscope and determined that these 2 casings were fired from the submitted firearm.
And how do you do that? How do you make that determination?
So the characteristics that are present, the individual characteristics that are present, so those are accidental in nature. They're not intended by the manufacturer. They're not reproducible by the manufacturer. So what that means is basically that every firearm that comes off of their assembly line will be different. And we've done validation studies to determine that even if we pull 10 firearms consecutively off of their assembly lines, we could still distinguish firearm 1 from 2, from 3, from 4, and from each other. And so using the comparison microscope and taking photographs and looking at the pictures and looking at the actual live images under the microscope, I determined that there were sufficient individual characteristics present for a comparison, and the agreement between the 2, the test fires and the evidence casings was sufficient to say that there was an identification. So they did come from the same firearm.
And the TF 16214 that's been in evidence, the rifle.
Correct. The rifle,
okay.
yes.
Stacy Exhibit 27, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I want to show you now the following exhibits that have been identified by Detective Christian.
The defense will stipulate that every casing, everything on that table came from or was associated with that firearm that was used to commit these crimes for which Mr. Cruz has already pled guilty.
That's fine, but there are other details that the jury has to hear that she doesn't know what she's going to stipulate to. So I appreciate that, but I think we have to go through it.
Okay.
Okay, I want to show you now State's Exhibits 227, 228, 221, 222, 223, 224, 225, and 226. And Detective Bell, they all came from different quadrants of the first floor hallway. You have an opportunity to examine those 70 fired casings?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and what was your determination?
So my determination was that the 70 fire casings did come from the submitted firearm, in this case, the submitted rifle in the case, and that there were, again, a mixed match of 223 and 5.56 ammunition that was expended, but regardless, they all came from the firearm that was submitted in the case, the rifle.
Okay, and what were some of the manufacturers of those?
Sure. So there were several from Lake City. Lake City is a military manufacturer for firearms, for ammunition. And so LC is their head stamp, and they stamped the year that it was manufactured. So there were actually, Lake City had several different years of manufacture that were found in here. It's the same manufacturer, but different lot years that they were produced. There was El Dorado, there was some ammunition from Malaysia, there was Remington Peters, Federal Cartridge Case Company, and I think that's all of them that were on this particular floor.
Okay. Are you able to make a determination from looking at a fired cartridge casing whether it was a tracer round or not?
No, so I can't tell the difference between a cartridge case that held a tracer round and a cartridge case that did not hold a tracer round. If it was a Federal Cartridge Case Company, I would say probably not, because they manufacture for civilian use, and so tracer rounds would not be something that's a civilian use purpose. However, any of the Lake City ammunition could have had a tracer round loaded into it, and there's really not a way for me to tell whether it did or not without the projectile itself.
Okay, so you have to look at the entire bullet to
Correct.
determine if it was a tracer round. Okay.
That's correct.
All right, let me take this from you. Now I want to show you State's Exhibit marked 240 that has been identified by Detective Flores as fired cartridge casings found on the second floor of the 1200. You examined those?
I did.
And what's the result of your examination of those?
So these were, again, fire cartridge cases that were identified as having come from the submitted Smith & Wesson rifle. And there was a mix of ammunition, although most of these were .223.
Okay. And again, the difference between the .223 and the 5.56?
The 5.56 has more powder, and so the velocity of the projectile itself leaving the barrel is higher when using 5.56 ammunition versus .223 ammunition.
Okay. And what's the velocity of TF-162 firing a projectile out of there?
So the velocity for if a .223 is coming out of the weapon, typically it's around 3,000 feet per second. If a 5.56 is coming out of it, it can range, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,200 feet per second to 4,000 feet per second.
Okay. And how about an average handgun, semi-automatic handgun? What's the velocity?
So something like a 9mm firearm is going to have a velocity somewhere around 1,000 to 1,500 feet per second.
Okay. Okay, let me take Stacy. And now I'm going to show you State's Exhibits. .318, .319, .320, .321, .322, .323. These have been previously identified as fired casings by Detective Crespo found on the third floor.
Yes, I did examine these.
Okay, and what was your determination?
All of the submitted casings from the third floor were identified as having been fired by the submitted Smith & Wesson rifle. There was, again, a mix of manufacturers involved in these casings. And there was also a mix of 223 and 556, although the majority of the casings on the third floor were 556.
Okay. And were there any different manufacturers of those cartridge casings?
Yes, there were several different manufacturers. Again, Lake City was one of the major manufacturers that was present. El Dorado Federal Cartridge Company was found there as well. There were some Remington. I believe that's it as far as manufacturers. So I believe it's 4 different manufacturers on the third floor.
All right. Did you make a list of all the manufacturers of all the fired cartridge casings found on the first floor, second floor, the west stairwell, and on the third floor?
Yes.
And what were the manufacturers?
So there was Lake City, El Dorado, Federal Cartridge Company, Remington, Malaysia, Winchester Military Ammunition, and again, Lake City, there was at least 3 different years of manufacture for that, so those would be different lot numbers, if you will, from Lake City.
Okay. Okay. And now showing you State's Exhibit Mark 314 and 315. And these 2 exhibits have been identified by Detective Crespo as becoming from the 1240, Teachers Lounge 1240, on the third floor of the 1200 building, and 1240A1, an adjoining room to the Teachers Lounge 1240. Have you examined those?
I have.
And what was your determination?
That all of these submitted cartridge cases were fired from the Smith & Wesson rifle that was submitted in this case.
Did you go into, ever have an occasion to go into the Teachers Lounge 1240 on the third floor of the 1200 building at Marjory, Stoneman, Douglas?
I did.
And what did you observe?
So I observed that in that particular room there was 2 areas where that in the windows that contained close gunfire, in the sense that the actual range of the shots through the windows were tightly grouped. So that indicates that the muzzle of the firearm was probably relatively close to the window, because if you're discharging this firearm rapidly from a distance, the firearm tends to rise. And so the grouping is not going to be a real tight grouping around the window. It would be more dispersed. So it looks like the shots were fairly close to that window, or to both windows.
Okay. Showing you now. State's Exhibit 195. And this exhibit has been identified by Detective Christian as 3 magazines coming from the first floor of the 1200. Mr. Bell, you can take a look at those magazines.
Yes, I did.
Okay. What are you able to tell us about those 3 magazines?
So 2 of the magazines are 30-round magazines, and then the final black magazine in the package is a 10-round magazine.
Okay. And there were 9 live rounds in one of those exhibits, and it was
Correct.
one of those magazines. And what were you able to determine?
That the cartridges themselves are full metal jacketed cartridges, manufactured by a mix of manufacturers. Again, some of them are from Remington, some of them are from Lake City. So there's a mix of 223 and 556 ammunition again in the magazine.
Okay. And I want to show you State's Exhibit 317. It's been identified by Detective Crespo as coming from the third floor hallway of the 1200 building. What is that?
So this one is a 40-round magazine, manufactured for 5.56 and .223 caliber ammunition.
Okay. And State's Exhibit 316 has been identified by Detective Crespo as coming from the Teacher's Lounge 1240 on the third floor of the 1200 building.
Yep. Yeah, this is another 40-round magazine, manufactured to hold 5.56 and .223 caliber ammunition.
Okay. And now I want to show you have you ever weighed what a full 40-round magazine, a 30-round magazine weighs?
I have.
Okay, I want to show you now State's Exhibit 280, State's Exhibit 276, State's Exhibit 277, State's Exhibit 279, and State's Exhibit 278. These 5 magazines have been testified that they came from a black vest found on the third floor stairwell by Detective Crespo.
Okay.
Okay, have you examined those exhibits?
I have.
Okay. And you said you have weighed a fully loaded 40-round magazine?
Yes.
Approximately how much does that weigh?
It weighs approximately 1.5 pounds.
And how about a 30-round fully loaded magazine?
It's roughly 1.1 pounds.
Okay. So those 5 magazines, what were you able to, and the projectiles within the magazines, what were you able to determine?
So I believe this is a 30-round magazine, a second 30-round magazine. This is a third 30-round magazine. This one's a 40-round magazine. And another 30-round magazine. The ammunition, again, is a mix of ammunition of both .223 and 5.56, different manufacturers involved in all of the magazines. And one of the magazines in particular, looks like State's Exhibit 277, contained several rounds of tracer ammunition as well.
All right, could you show us what a tracer round looks like?
Sure.
Your Honor, can you step down?
Sure.
So these are the tracer rounds that I'm mentioning with that orange tip on the rounds themselves. So you can see that a regular round doesn't have anything on the tip, but the tracer rounds have a small band at the very tip of it that has that orange color to it. And again, the designations are different. They're NATO designations. So armor piercings will be black, incendiaries will be red, tracers are orange. So standard without it, and then the orange band.
And Mr. Bella, were you able to give us a total, or were you able to come up with a total of how many 5.56 live rounds you examined?
Yes. So it looks like 5.56 ammunition. There's a total of 204 live cartridges that were submitted. Of that, believe it's 163 are 5.56, and then the remaining are 2.23.
Okay, and
On
how
the
about
live.
the, I'm sorry,
Sorry, what?
and how about the fire casings that you examined?
Yeah. The fired cartridge cases, 85 cartridge cases were 5.56, and 54 were 2.23.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bello. Your Honor, thank you. I have no further questions from Mr. Bello.
Okay, is there any questions from the defense?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, sir. You're excused.
Maybe we go sidebar.
Sure.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take about a 10-minute recess. Please do not discuss the case among one another, and please leave your notepads behind. Thank you. So, the jurors have exited. Since we started later this morning, my preference would be to go a bit later before we take a lunch break. I'll leave it up to you, but if, Ms. McCann, if you can have a plan as to how many people people you intend to call before the break so I know when to call time.
Okay.
And you don't have to let me know right now. You can take a recess and then let me know.
I believe that we can probably get on 4
Okay, that
before lunch.
sounds like a plan. And then we'll recess for lunch and then we'll come back. Okay?
If you're on.
All right, thank you. But for now, we're just doing a short recess so that you all can prepare your next witness. And the matters that we discussed, we can talk about at the end of the day.
Okay.
All right? Thank you. We're at recess for about 10 minutes. Thank you.
Now, because we went from a victim impact statement to a fact witness, now back to a victim impact statement, my intention is to read the same instruction that I read yesterday before your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So are both sides ready to bring the jury in?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Jurors are entering.
Okay, the jurors are present. Everyone else may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, you are going to hear evidence about the impact of the murders on the family, friends, and community of the decedents. This evidence is presented to show a victim's uniqueness as an individual and the resultant loss by the decedent's death. However, you may not consider this evidence as an aggravating factor. State.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Lori Oliveff, please. Mr. Oliveff is here as well, Your Honor.
Okay, sir and ma'am, would you both please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Okay, thank you. You can go ahead and be seated. And before you begin speaking, if you could please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Lori Alhadeff, Alhadeff.
I'm going to start with Mrs. Oliveff first.
Okay.
Mrs. Oliveff, are you the mother of Alyssa Oliveff?
Yes.
I'm going to show you that's a photo that's been marked State's Exhibit 33. Can you identify this, please?
That's my daughter, Alyssa Alhadeff.
Would you please show it to the jury? Thank you. Mrs. Olive, did you prepare a statement to be read to the jury today?
Yes.
Will you please read it for us?
The Oxford Dictionary defines grief as deep sorrow, especially that caused by someone's death. I don't believe the word grief adequately describes what I have felt since Alyssa was shot and killed almost 4 years ago. How can I possibly measure the impact felt by the loss of Alyssa? It's as if I have all the love in the world to give and no one to give it to. The real measure of damage done certainly cannot be expressed or calculated in words, as this kind of pain and emptiness will most certainly last forever. It is the most devastating event when a parent outlives his or her own child. There isn't even a word for it in the English language, as though its unnatural, abnormal nature, indescribable, and unable to be named. Alyssa Miriam Al-Hadaf was my first child and my only daughter, my best friend and love of my life. She was the heartbeat of our family. She loved soccer and riding the waves of Long Beach Island, New Jersey every summer. Alyssa always kept us on our toes, always. She was an incredible to Robbie and Kobe, and negotiator extraordinaire during families' discussions. As the captain of her soccer team, she was a source of support, protection, and motivation for her friends, both on and off the field. Alyssa had no idea how amazing she was. In fact, her humility was one of her most attractive qualities. I think about her every day, and I wish she was here with us. I look around our home and see photo albums that will never be filled with the mementos or memories of Alyssa after the age of 14. I see framed pictures with only photos of Alyssa at the very beginning of her teenage years. I'm left with a feeling of emptiness I still cannot accept. Our scrapbooks will never hold pictures or memories of Alyssa's high school or college graduations, her wedding, her babies, and on and on and on. She wasn't given time here with us to continue to write her story. Her life was cut tragically short and will never be the same. Alyssa's death has forever changed the course of my life and how I lead it. There's a fire inside me now, pushes me forward every day. Losing Alyssa was damaging not only to our family, but to our community as well. Such tragedy and loss is far-reaching and will be remembered forever. As time passes and I continually think about what could have been for Alyssa, the pain does not subside and the grief does not lessen. I surely would have traded places with her that day if I could have. But the life I now lead is in honor of my Alyssa Miriam Al-Hadaf, our angel who will always be remembered and never forgotten.
Thank you. Dr. Olive. You've prepared a statement for us today. Would you please share it with the jury?
I've longed for the day that I would get to speak at this hearing. I wanted to tell this jury what happened to my family and this community. I wanted to tell you what happened to my Alyssa On February 14th, 2018, my 14-year-old daughter was right where she was supposed to be, in her high school English class. 4 years later, she's supposed to have been in her second year of college. Soon she'd go on to be a professional soccer player. She'd get her law degree and maybe become one of the most successful business negotiation lawyers the world would see. She was supposed to get married, and I was going to have my father-daughter dance. She would have had a beautiful family, 4 kids, live in a gorgeous house, a beach house on the side. All those plans came to an end with Alyssa's murder. Alyssa's murder impacted so many people in so many ways. After Alyssa's death, my father was never the same. He passed away a year later. My elderly mother, Alyssa, lost her granddaughter. My elderly mother, she lost her granddaughter and struggles to find happiness in her life. Then there's my father-in-law, who always said Alyssa could do no wrong. They had a very special bond, one that you love to see between grandparents and grandchildren. But this was broken only by Alyssa's murder. Anytime you start talking about Alyssa, the guy that typically makes all the jokes gets very upset and has to change the subject. My mother-in-law, she also had a special bond with Alyssa. Not a day goes by that she doesn't get emotional and go to tears when talking about Alyssa. Now she's dedicated her life to honoring Alyssa's memory. She goes and decorates Alyssa's gravesite, spends time trying to honor her at the beach house, and always tries to get involved in the foundation we created in honor of Alyssa. Alyssa was the captain of her soccer team and the center of all her friends. She lifted them up. She helped them study. She was the shoulder to cry on, and she was the ear to listen. No matter what her friends needed, she was there for them. Most of all, she had this infectious laugh that now I only get to watch on TikTok videos. Alyssa's friends have all suffered in so many ways. Many of them still go to counseling. One in particular struggles to move forward in her life, and it pains me to see the sorrow on her face each time I see her. Then there are Alyssa's brothers. One was too young to comprehend, but asked to go to the cemetery to see his sister from time to time. This is not normal. For the older one, I feel like Alyssa was his best friend. He looked up to her in so many ways. The night of the tragedy, he stayed up the whole night, calling me every hour, asking me if we had found her yet. And I didn't have the heart to tell him on the phone that his sister was murdered. So I had to wait till we got home and had to share this tragic news to him. It broke my heart having to say this to him. About a year or so later, he asked if he could switch rooms so he could be closer to her. He holds back his sadness and anger with losing his sister, but recently at the gravesite, he gave a speech and just came to tears. This is not normal for young boys growing up. They should not know of such sorrow, such loss and tragedy. My wife, the mother of our children, lost her firstborn daughter. She gives talks about how it was like someone ripping out her heart and stabbing it. She fights every single day to keep Alyssa's name alive, whether it's with our foundation, with the school board, with the girls' soccer club. She wears bracelets with Alyssa's name on it. She occasionally sprays Alyssa's perfume just to try and smell her. She even sleeps with Alyssa's blankets. 4 years later, she continues to grieve like it was yesterday. And while her life was busy then, running for the kids, she stays busy now, just so she doesn't stop and cry. Then there was me, my firstborn daughter, my shining star, Daddy's girl, was taken from me. I get to watch my friends, my neighbors, colleagues spending time enjoying their daughters, enjoying all the normal milestones, taking in the joys, and I can only watch videos or go to the cemetery to see my daughter. It was 4 years ago to everyone, but to me it was yesterday. Alyssa will always be 14, and I will always be at the point in life with her. All I know is a piece of my heart was not just cut out, but it was ripped out of my damn chest. For 4 years, I've watched so many struggle. Well, the only option I've had is to keep it together for my family. And inside, I burned like a damn inferno. It took me so long to be able to feel empathy again. And this prevented me from doing what I'm good at, which is caring for patients. Unfortunately, I have to live my life with anger now and make it fuel my existence. Like my wife, I try and stay busy so I don't break down. While the world gets to move on with their lives, we don't have that luxury. Missing our daughter every single day. No parent is supposed to have this grief. Without our daughter, Alyssa, our lives have been changed forever.
Thank you, Dr. Allardyce. The state is next going to call Teresa Robinovitz.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. You can be seated, and when you're seated, please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Just get seated. It's okay. My name is Teresa Robinovitz, Robinovitz. As Alyssa would say, I'm Grammys.
Good morning, Mrs. Robinovitz.
Good morning.
Are you the grandmother of Alyssa Al-Hadef?
Yes, I am.
And have you prepared a statement to give to the court today?
Yes, I have.
Would you please read it for us?
Yes. Our family tree of life has been broken with the loss of my granddaughter, Alyssa Al-Hadef, in the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School shooting, February 14, 2018. Living after the death of a child is beyond tears. It is a daily battle to survive the hardships rendered from her tragic death. The first time I walked back into Alyssa's home, I thought to myself, the photos on the walls will never change because she ceased to exist. There will never be another family birthday celebration for her. While sitting at their kitchen table, I can still visualize Alyssa bouncing down the steps and saying, "What's there to eat? I'm hungry." I'd immediately jump into action to prepare whatever she wanted. She usually likes spaghetti. Reliving those memories bring me back pain. Alyssa's death shattered the hearts of the entire family and friends, near and far. Alyssa was loved for the 14-year-old teenager that she was, full of energy, enthusiastic, with a contagious smile that brought sunshine to all who knew and met her. It causes me pain to know that forever lost are the proms, the parties, going to college, a career, never to marry, never to have children, never to share with me more memories of her life. Alyssa's absence for holiday celebrations only leaves a memory in the seat she always sat in. The sunshine of our family has dimmed, and my imagination is just thinking of Alyssa as a bright star on a clear night. Alyssa was my daughter's only daughter. Alyssa was special and unique. Her two brothers, Robbie and Kobe, have experienced the loss of their only sister, who they looked up to, especially as a role model in the sport of soccer. Alyssa followed in her mother's footsteps, playing soccer beginning at the age of 3 years old. She held the position as attacking midfielder, wearing the number 8 proudly. She was captain of her soccer team, taking additional responsibilities, shouting out plays to her teammates. In the soccer game the night before her death, she was seen on the field jumping over an opponent twice her size. She's as short as I am. And she headed the ball to move the ball towards the goal. My daughter shared with me afterwards that after that game, she told Alyssa she played the best game of her life. Alyssa's response was, "I know, Mom." I believe this was a memorable gift that she left for all who saw her play that Tuesday night, February 13, 2018. Alyssa had respect for her coaches, teammates, and always gave them constructive, positive feedback on and off the field. My beautiful, talented granddaughter had an extremely bright future for possibly law school. Her brothers were always grateful that Alyssa persuaded her parents to get extra TV channels. Outside of school, Alyssa did community service in local homeless shelters. At night, she would read New York Times best-selling books, and we would have to tell her to shut the lights off and go to bed. As a matter of fact, currently a book she wrote when she was in 3rd grade about her love for horses, I'm in the process of trying to publish that for her. Saturday before her death, she participated in a good friend's concierge's 15th birthday celebration. I watched a video of her dancing in formal attire, and I told her the next day how eloquent and beautiful she looked. I will always remember her smelling like Victoria's Secret Pink Star Mist, which I know her mom sprays on herself all the time. Alyssa's death has impacted us all. Unfortunately, as a result of Alyssa's death, I myself have seen psychiatrists and weekly psychologists. I take prescribed medication for depression and anxiety. I have outbursts of tears at any time. Sleepless nights and anger, which has replaced the pure joy of living each day. Each night, I too go to bed and wrap myself with an extra blanket that I would once cover Alyssa with. I do this to have a sense of feeling closeness to her in a fictitious way. Words alone cannot express the pain and anguish our family and friends have endured since the murders. I cannot even drive down the streets in Parkland without it bringing me back memories of Alyssa driving her to various places I used to go. The Marriott Hotel, where we were told she was definitely one of the victims, the high school where she was murdered, are just a few examples that cause me pain every day when I drive down the streets in Parkland. The effect on others is unimaginable, both in the family and with close friends. In the fall of 2018, her older brother went to a private school due to a feeling of being uncomfortable being at MSD, where his sister was murdered. This became an unexpected financial cost. The laughters, the hugs, the sense of security, and the opportunity to say, "I love you," are forever gone. The celebration of love on the national holiday of Valentine's Day has only brought me back sorrow and memories of that tragic day on February 14, 2018, as well as when we gather at the Star of David Cemetery with prayers that Alyssa is resting in heaven.
Thank you, Mrs. Rabinovitz. The state would next call Annika and Mitch Dworet, please.
Would you both please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You can go ahead and be seated. And then prior to speaking, if you would just please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
My name is Annika Dworet, D-W-O-R-E-T.
My name is Mitchell Dworet, D-W-O-R-E-T.
Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Dworet. Are you the mother and father of Nikolas Dworet?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 55 that's been entered into evidence. Can you identify this photograph?
Yes, it's my beautiful son, Nikolas.
That's our baby.
Can you show it to the jury, please? Thank you. Mrs. and Mr. Dora, did you prepare a statement for your family?
Yes.
Yes.
And Mrs. Dora, would you like to present it to us today?
Yes.
Okay. Would you please read it to the court?
Sure. Our son Nick was an amazing person. He was funny, kind, and very loving. He was a competitive swimmer, the captain of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas swim team. He was also an excellent student, and he had just received a student athletic scholarship to the University of Indianapolis. It was always a joy to see the loving and caring relationship Nick had with his brother Alex. He would always watch over him, and they had so much fun together. Nick had plans to study finance in college, always talked about one day moving to Boston with his girlfriend Daria. Nick and Daria had a truly beautiful relationship. They were always so loving, and he would do anything for her. Nick was a food lover, and he would eat just about anything, although he had some favorites like sushi, pizza, and Oreo cookies. We even found a hidden stash of empty Oreo boxes in his closet. Music was a huge part of his life. He listened to all kinds of music, and he would often be the DJ on road trips with the swim team. Nick was a leader, and he always encouraged other people to do their best. He was very inclusive of everyone. Nick's last evening with us, he spent time speaking to the younger kids on the swim team, giving them some pointers on how to improve. Nick had big goals, bigger than most of us dare to dream of. This was a note that Nick had written and taped on the wall next to his bed. I want to become a Swedish Olympian and go to Tokyo 2020 to compete for my country. I will give all I have in my body and my mind to achieve the goals I have set. I will train as hard as I can in and out of the water. Even on my hardest days, I swear to give it my all, and I will let nothing stand in my way. Train harder. Now we will never know if he would have reached his goal to go to the Olympics. Our hearts will forever be broken. We will always live with excruciating pain. We have an empty bedroom in our house. There's an empty chair at our dining table. Alex will never have a brother to talk or hang out with. They will never again go for a drive blasting very loud music. We did not get to see Nick graduate from high school or college. We will not get to see him getting married. We will always hesitate before answering the question, how many kids do you have? There are no words to express how much we all miss Nick. The world is missing out not having Nick in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dora.
Members of the jury, we're going to take a recess for lunch. I'm going to ask that you please be back at 10 minutes before 2 so that we can have a goal of starting back up at 2 o'clock. Please remember I'm sure you're tired of hearing me say this, but I say it every time. Please do not discuss the case among yourselves. Do not begin deliberating. Do not let anyone approach you and talk to you about the case. Please leave your notepads behind, and I'll see you back at 10 minutes to 2. Okay, the jurors have been excused. We're going to be in recess. If everyone could please try to be back a few minutes before 2 so that we can start at 2 o'clock, I would appreciate it. Other than that, we're in recess.